Hi guys, welcome to Motoring Middle East Full Chat. This is Full Chat number 7. It's been a while since we've done one of these, but I'm really excited about this one because I'm here with an old pal of mine from the British automotive media scene. And I'll get him to tell you a little bit about himself in a minute, but I just want to give you a very quick introduction. This is James Ruppert, and he's the man that actually coined the term Bangernomics, which is the whole concept of motoring on a budget. And in addition to that, he's done loads of other stuff, which we'll get into. But he's also a comic book creator, and I've got that here actually. I want to show you guys. It's really exciting. So without messing around further, let's get straight into it. James!
Shahzad.
So great to see you again after all this
Absolutely.
time. Well, how long has it been since we saw each other?
It's got to be a decade.
Yeah, at least, I reckon.
I would say so. Yeah. But we're still looking really good, I think.
Yeah, well, you've got this whole distinguished gentleman thing going on now, which you didn't have before, but
No,
I was like, that's really cool though. So you plan to keep this beard?
Oh yeah, I think so. It's nice and warm in the winter. Absolutely, yeah.
You store some food in there or something?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can save something for later.
So for our viewers, tell us a little bit about yourself. How long you've been doing this? Where did you start? Why do you do this?
Well, exactly. I actually started selling cars. So I come from the basis of not being a writer or anything like that, but it was actually a job. I went and sold BMWs. I had the best job in the world.
So you're a car salesman. You sold
I was a car salesman. I sold BMWs at the best place in the world, at Park Lane. So it was
Park Lane of London.
Yeah, Park Lane of London. I was there for just over 2 years. I had a fantastic time, and it taught me everything I know about cars.
Yeah. Cars or the trade?
Yeah, sort of both, really.
Yeah.
It was selling cars was something I hadn't done before, but selling cars is more interesting than selling washing machines or anything like that.
Yeah, of course.
It's something that you could get into, and it was great that you got a company car.
Yeah.
I remember looking at the job. It said, "Oh, you earn a lot of money, plus you get a BMW 3 Series." I thought, well, there's no downside. There's no downside to that job at all. And I seemed to take to it. You know, it was something that I could do, and I enjoyed. And I enjoyed the deals. I enjoyed. You would get part exchanges coming, and then if you were clever, you could resell them, and so you would make money that way and this way. And it was based on.
But hang on. So your journey started off selling premium cars to customers, brand new cars. To this baby, this is the thing that you'll be remembered for, isn't it?
It was, absolutely.
And this is all about budget motoring.
It is because that's the reality, and in a way, because I saw people come in, and they were part exchange cars, and sometimes they were cars which weren't that old. I remember someone with actually a Volkswagen Santana, which is a model that people may not even ever have heard of. Yeah. It was so unpopular. That's why you've never heard.
It's actually not a bad looking car, though.
No, that's right.
Quite slick, so big. It was a estate, right?
Yeah, no, it was. It was just a huge saloon.
Yeah.
And this chap bought it, regretted it, and thought, "No, I better have a BMW." Yeah. And obviously, you had to break the news to him that it was worth 10p.
Yeah.
And he'd bought it months before, and it wasn't a bad car, but it was just a very unpopular car. So immediately I thought, so you've lost all this money. That's madness.
Yeah.
You know, I like making money, and if I can afford to buy something, I'll buy it. But I don't really want to have to borrow money or lose money. And this is sort of based on.
So you felt sorry for your customers? Is that what you're saying? So you're not a good salesman. You're supposed to be ruthless, right?
I was empathetic.
Right.
I think that's what you're supposed to be.
Good,
so maybe that's why I sold loads of cars. But also, my dad used to tell me he worked with a chap who used to pay £5 for cars. So it was in the 1950s.
£5.
Yeah, he worked.
So just hang on. So just for the people with the £5, we're talking 25 dirhams for a car.
Yeah. So my dad, he worked with somebody who would never pay any more than £5 for a car. They were usually like Ford Prefects, very old cars, and he would run it until it stopped. So he wouldn't even put oil in it.
No servicing, nothing.
No, he just thought, I'll just run it.
Yeah.
Because you could buy very cheap. There was no MOT in those days. I would point that out. So it could be a very marginal car.
Yeah. MOT is an annual inspection, like we have the RTA inspection in Dubai. Yeah.
Exactly. And he would run it until one day it would stop by the side of the road. He'd get out, shut the door, and walk off. That's a very irresponsible thing to do. That's not a good thing to do. To do that.
Yeah, but this was when though?
This is in the 50s, very early 50s.
Yeah.
And also, my dad did buy a Humber Super Snipe just after the war with one of his brothers, And that was about £15, and it was a huge car.
Yeah.
It was a pre-war massive limousine. But again, nobody wanted them. So you could buy these cars for not very much money. And that lasted for, I think, about 5-6 years. It was like a huge people carrier, because it came with a very large cover.
Put oil in there, sure.
Oh yeah, no, they looked after that one. They looked after, but it was the fact that it was a large, cheap car that nobody wanted.
Yeah.
And again, so there was resources there that would otherwise go to waste. The cars would be broken up.
Yeah.
So
this appreciation and understanding of the value of things and how they could be used was instilled in you from your dad.
Yeah, that's right.
But then you went to selling new BMWs, and then how did that journey start back towards this way then?
Well, I left selling cars because there are no retirement parties in the car business. Because what happens in the car business is you sort of run out of road at one place, you go to another, and it can be a very good lifestyle. But I didn't see any career progression or any satisfaction. I might have been able to earn a lot more money, but I just thought, no, I've done that. I've enjoyed it, and I was young at the time, so that's probably the best time to do it.
Young guy, East London, BMWs.
Absolutely.
Can't get better,
that's
right?
Fine. But I couldn't think of anything worse of having to, because the problem is with sales is that if you don't have a very good month, you could get sacked quite easily.
It can be quite stressful.
Absolutely. So it could be stressful if you have a family and stuff. So I just thought, no, I don't think I want to have that in the future. I think I want to do something else. Always interested in writing. And I thought I'll write about selling cars.
Right.
So that took me to actually dealing with car dealers. So I actually wrote.
So is this the first thing that you wrote?
So that's really the first thing I wrote.
This is dealing with car dealers, how to buy a car from the motor trade on your terms. On your terms,
yeah. Because again, I'd seen it firsthand. I'd seen people come in and say, I've got lots of money.
That's a very, very Del Boy sort of arm.
Very much. That's not me. That's not me. But I saw people come into car showrooms and they would say, take my money.
Yeah.
What have you got?
Yeah.
There was no, they didn't debate with you. They just sort of said, and they'd come in wanting a white one because you're a good car salesman. I've got a black one that's not selling around the back. Yeah. So I'll push that on. Yeah. So you would find yourself doing that. So I just thought, that's terrible. I think people should be warned about this and it would help. So
how did that go down with your colleagues in the car trade? Were you giving away all these secrets?
They just found it very funny.
All right.
That they're okay because they didn't have anything to concern themselves about. They just thought it was a laugh. I think they just thought, what on earth are you doing this for? Because you're not going to earn any money from a book. Yeah. But that was Haze Publishing, so it was the people who print the manuals.
With the manuals,
that's right.
Haze do the how to fix manuals, and recently they've branched into how to get married and how to fix the Starship Enterprise and all of that sort of stuff.
It's quite bizarre, but they're the biggest motoring publisher for many years, and so I said to them.
So how did you manage to get that gig though? Because this was your first writing gig.
You
managed to sell it to Haze. That's incredible.
Well, it is. When I think about it now, it is. At the time, I just thought no, because maybe I was a very good salesman at the time. So that's what I probably did. I sold the concept to them, and so before I'd written for any car magazine or anything, I wrote a book. Yeah. So that's where it came from there. And the first.
Did you have any writing experience before that at all?
No, I didn't have any at all.
Really? And then you just set off to write a book? That's incredible.
Yeah, that's right.
Because that's quite, even for me, I find that quite a daunting thing to. I mean, writing a 1,000-word article is daunting enough, but then writing an entire book.
It is. I just always enjoyed writing, but I always because all about this writing about cars is great. But you've got to be able to, I believe, and I'm sure that you agree, is you should be able to write about anything.
Yes.
And I always, if I went on holiday, I'd write about the holiday when I came back and try and make it funny and pick out the stories and the characters. Yeah. And I think anybody who wants to write about cars, you don't just write about cars. You've got to be into the
You've got to be an effective communicator.
Absolutely.
You've got to be able to get an idea across, a message across.
That's it.
What would you say is your style of writing?
I try to make it as light as possible. I try to make it like I'm having a conversation with you. If I can get some gags in there, that's great. I want to make it as light. I don't want to make it heavy at any point. I don't want anybody to yawn and be bored. That's really it. From the very beginning, I want to engage the reader, and that's what any good writer will do.
So from here, I mean, was this like, oh my God, I've made it, I've got a book and published it. Was this it? Or did this launch you? Was this the platform?
Very slightly. I got some, I wrote in some very odd magazines, like there was a magazine called Woman's Own. I wrote in
Woman's Own?
Woman's Own, so again, how
womanly ways.
Yeah, that's right. But it was advice, to women about buying cars.
Did you have to pretend to be somebody else for that?
No, I didn't. No, and they were very good, and they plugged the book, and they paid me. So that's the way it used to work. And I wrote for a very glossy magazine called Tatler, if you remember that. Sort of a society magazine. So I got to write in various places. But one thing I did do, I wrote to Car Magazine and Steve Cropley, who people may know, and I just said, you know,
an
you write,
legend.
that's right. You write about brand new cars and supercars, and that's great. I said, but more people buy used cars. Surely you should have a column.
Yeah.
And in an incredible turn of events, he said, yeah, okay then. So he said, yeah, that's fine.
Wow.
So I wrote something.
And again, that's not something that could happen today, really.
I think it would be a bit of a struggle today. I think people were different. I think people were more willing to take a risk and go, yeah, okay, we'll have a go at that. Yeah. And so that's where really me writing about used
cars. And because, again, to try and emphasise how amazing that was, because Car Magazine is one of the top magazines. You've got Autocar, you've got Car.
Yeah.
And with the oldest, most established, most prestigious titles there is, and you managed to get straight into car. That's incredible.
Well, again, yes, it's a thing that on reflection, at the time I just thought, I'll try and write in car. But yes, I missed a whole level of people writing for local papers and doing really quite rubbish, jobs at court reporting and things like that. I missed out all of that, and I went straight to car. So I was very lucky.
Yeah, so that's great. Yeah. And then where did you go from there? Because then you built a portfolio writing for magazines. You basically became a motoring journalist at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. After that, although again at the time you still had to have a real job, and I worked in advertising, and maybe I did.
Whilst you were doing this.
Whilst I was doing this, I probably did hone my craft. I wrote. I was a copywriter, so I would. So that's a brilliant training because you have to come up with
tight, as pithy.
Absolutely, it's got to hit the spot, and it's got to sell it, and it's got to be. Again, I think what people don't understand about writing, and as you know very very well, if someone says write 200 words, you write 200 words. Yeah. There's no point writing 300 words because it's going to be chopped. So again, I learnt how to write to a particular size, and that was a huge help. Yeah. And yes, I was very lucky. I wrote for Car. There was a sister publication called Supercar Classics that I wrote for, and I just went into all sorts of other. So right from the beginning, you established yourself as sort of the used market, the older cars, you know. So you didn't really review new cars as such. You were focusing more on that end of the market. That's right. Because it was my little niche, and I just felt and that was great. People would give me work because they knew I knew about.
So that's a really good tip for people that want to, you know, although we don't necessarily advise you get into media right now, but it's a good tip to like focus on a particular area that maybe other people aren't looking at, and then that gives you a unique niche where you can then take forward.
And if you can get some expertise. I was lucky I had a job doing it, and I have said to people, go and get a job, even if it's cleaning cars. You know, just learn a tiny bit about the business, and that will give you a fantastic insight, and that will be more than most other people will have if there's an interview. Because you can say you did it.
So basically, all of that has just been built up to this interview, really. So now, so tell me to this, because this is absolutely legendary. Bangernomics. This is a term that you actually coined for Autocar magazine, was it?
Well, it actually went into, there was a magazine called Buying Cars, which was run by Steve Cropley, left Car magazine, and he started one called Buying Cars. And it was basically about used cars, because again, he saw the value in it, in that, you know, for a few £1,000s, in the old days you could buy a Porsche.
Okay, so let's for our viewers define Bangernomics. What is Bangernomics?
It's really the supreme good sense of buying a well-used car that has had most of the depreciation knocked out of it, but it's still a reliable car. It's still.
So are we talking a 3-year-old car, a 5-year-old car, or older than that?
I would say we're probably talking. I mean, you can define it in any ways. In many ways, I say to people, "Can you afford the car?" And if they can afford the car, then that's fine. Right. Because I think the problem that we have is that people will borrow money to buy a car,
but that's very much a culture now.
It is.
You know, everybody buys stuff on credit, right?
I understand why everybody does it. I understand, a PCP, because it's an easy way to own a car. You don't have to worry about it, and for most of the people, I completely understand that. But you do get into a cycle, because once the lease or the contract hire runs out on one, you're into another. At the end of the period, you don't actually own it in most cases. So I think that for a lot of people, they don't need a brand new car. I think they like the idea of a brand new car because the neighbours,
they got one, and so
it turns their head. But for a lot of people, they're just going to the station, or they're just doing the shopping, or it's a very short commute, and you just think, well, really, you could buy a really, really good car that it's going to cost you a fraction.
I think you're absolutely right, but I think there's another element to that. In that, and maybe this is taking the conversation in a slightly different direction. We need to pull it back to this, but anyway, well, I want to get this in now because I think that older cars, they do have a charisma, they have a personality, and particularly a used car has developed that personality, has a worn look about it, has, you know what I mean? It's got like,
well, that's right.
A patina about it, right?
Yeah, I mean the one thing actually I'm considering of sort of reinventing it. I would still call it Bangernomics running an older car. Yeah. But I would say, yes, if you've got something like an old Land Rover that because a Land Rover has a complete character of its own. Yeah. But if you spend money on looking after it, maybe replacing the chassis because it's rusted, I still think that's Bangernomics. I think what you're doing is you're doing the most environmentally friendly thing that anybody can ever do is keep a car running. Yeah.
And I think this is a key point, actually. This is worth emphasizing, that actually the most environmentally friendly car, somebody worked it out, didn't they? It was like a 50-year-old Land Rover, wasn't it? I think a few years ago somebody did the maths. Yeah. And it was a what do they call it? From dust, what is it? From production, it's production to dust. So basically, what they're talking about is not just the production of the car, but actually right back to the raw materials. From when they were extracted to when they are basically recycled or whatever. And they look at the whole lifetime value, and they go, if you take an old Land Rover or an old Beetle or something like that, or an old Mini or something like that, that's actually the most environmentally friendly car because you're making the best use of those materials. Whereas a modern car, they survive what, 5, 6, 10 years maybe, and then they get recycled. So the turnover on that, the production, the transport costs, the raw materials, the extraction of the raw materials, actually is quite detrimental.
No, that's right. Well, I did speak a couple of times to a very nice chap called Charles Ware. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago, but he came up with the Morris Minor Centre. Right. And he called it sustainable motoring. Yeah. So he had Morris Minors. That's all he had. It, right. Morris Minors, and he would rebuild them. Yeah. And yes, I mean they would need rebuilding after 20 years, but then they were as good as new. Yeah. And it was
just carry on being used for another 20 years.
And that's just what he did. And massively loyal customers, and as you say, they're simple, basic cars. Yeah. They're not going to go that fast. You're not going to do dangerous things in them. They are just practical, fantastic cars
with a bit of style and charisma.
With style, and actually, if you look after them, the value has probably gone up.
For the classic cars, that's right. Yeah.
Absolutely, what's better than that?
I mean, I kind of subscribe to your whole notion of Bangernomics as well. When I used to live in the UK, so I would buy £400 or £500 clunkers off eBay. And then run them for a while, and then just sell them back onto eBay and just get something else, And that's sort of my perception of Bangernomics, is where you can buy a cheap car and enjoy it. So it's like a lot of cars that maybe you dreamt of as a kid, you couldn't afford, and you go, you know what, I can get that 5 Series now, or I can get that CRX now, and I can have a bit of fun with it, and then just stick it back onto eBay and get rid of it.
Providing the car is still roadworthy, you can get the majority of your money back, but you've actually, as you pointed out, you spent so little. Yeah. So, you spent 500, if you got 400 back, well, £100 motoring for maybe a year. Wow. You just can't, that's...
And worst case scenario, if it dies... It's £500, £600, whatever,
That's right. But actually, cars built in the last 20 years have actually they are so much better. Yeah. I mean, cars from the 60s and 70s really would fall apart.
So this is what I want to touch on next. And when did you come up with this concept? How long ago was that?
Well, I wrote an article. I bought it was a Polski Fiat. I bought a Polski Fiat. That's
is that like a Fiat 124 or something?
It was a 128.
128, right?
Oh yeah, no, actually, you are correct. A 124. Yeah. That was
a little saloon,
that's
three-box
right.
saloon.
Yeah, which Italy sold to the Eastern Bloc, and it was either a Lada or if it was made in Poland, it was a Polski Fiat. FSO is another. And I wrote an article for Steve Cropley's magazine, Buying Cars. I paid £80 for it. Right. So I did it as an experiment.
So you bought the car for £80?
I bought the car for £80.
So as part of the article?
Yeah, because before that my car had been off the road, and I was without a car, and I had to get taxis and buses, and it was just, I was getting wet at the bus stop. I was late for appointments. It was just like, oh, for goodness sake, I'm not in a car.
Nice to have a little roof over your head and
that's
stuff.
Right, exactly. So I found the cheapest car. It wasn't awful. It was a terrible car, but it was amusing. I mean, it was a bit like the lights were held on with Band-Aid plasters. So I've actually got pictures of it with.
But this is the thing, you see. Now you see, you've got stories to tell, and you remember things about the car which you wouldn't have about a modern, say, Ford Fiesta or whatever, right?
Yeah, I know. So I made a case. I just said, well, look, I ran this for a few weeks, and I had to scrap it at the end because it was awful. But For a month,
Yeah.
it was okay, and it was
A
cheaper.
month's motoring for £80.
But it was cheaper than buying rail tickets and doing all sorts of things. So that was the article, and in that's where I coined the phrase Bangernomics.
And that was when?
That was 1990.
1990, right.
So that was 1990.
Yeah.
And then I did spend some time in India, and I was constantly amazed and fascinated.
When were you in India?
Just for a short while, in the very early 90s. I spent some time.
And which part of India?
It was the northern part. But it was the resourcefulness. So
what did you buy there? The old Fiat and Ambassador?
No, well, I travelled in plenty of those.
Yeah.
But it was just the resourcefulness of the people there.
Yeah.
In that, we can make that work. Yeah,
Yeah.
it looks broken, but it isn't. And they would do it by the side of the road. You know, with a hammer and repair it. And again, it was just that we live in such a throwaway society. You just think, well, nothing is ever thrown away there.
No, it was a very good point. I remember one time in Pakistan, I was there many years ago, and my cousin took the spark plugs out of his car, put the new spark plugs in, and then kept the spark plugs. I said, what are you going to do with this? And we get them fixed. I'm like, what do you mean get them? We just throw them away. And no, let me show you. So he went to this place where there was a whole there's a line of shops, little huts, little holes in the wall, where people are just doing different things to different parts. And he went to one specific one where this guy just did spark plugs. That's it. Yeah. And he gave him the spark plugs, and he put them on the machine, and he just grind them and clean them and stuff like that, and they were sparking again. He goes, there you go, they're fine.
Well, strange enough, I have a little machine at home which you used to be able to buy in Halfords, and it would clean them. You would put it on. There were 2 crocodile clips would go on top of the battery. You would put that into a little cover, and it would blast. It would be like a sandblast of the actual spark plug. Yeah. And then you would clean it, wash it in petrol so it's clean, and reuse it, because that's what people used to do, and that is what people have completely,
That's it. So everything now, just throw it away.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And this is how old cars still survive in places like India and Pakistan and the third world countries, because they just keep those things going. Yeah. And in South America and places like that, right? They just keep those things going. That's the incredible thing.
Cuba is the most amazing example where they had nothing. Yeah. And they would use soap as brake fluid. In order to make
as brake fluid.
Oh yeah.
Right.
It's just again incredible because they're in such circumstances where they had nothing at all. That's how resourceful people became. In order to keep cars running.
That's incredible. So fast forwarding to today to 1990s, so 28 years on or something like that. And like I said, I back maybe 10, 12 years ago when I was here, I'd do this sort of thing. I would buy old cars and sell them. But looking now at the market, I feel that it's changed. I feel that you can't find the same quality of cars. I say quality in a very loose term because we're talking old cars. But, in a sense, those sort of cars for that sort of money, I'm talking like £300-400. I don't think you can get these things anymore. Can we, or am I wrong?
Yeah, there are some. I think you are right. We have had some scrappage schemes, and that's unfortunately got rid of a lot of perfectly good cars for no apparent reason. Yeah. Also, people are a bit more resistant to it because
just explain what a scrappage scheme is to our
scrappage scheme. Bring your old car to us. It's worth probably £1 or £2. But we'll give you £1,000, £2,000 for it against a brand new car. So for a lot of people, it's an easy way.
Is this a government subsidised thing? Is it?
Well, the ones that have been around recently, there was there was a government one a few years ago, but it is a manufacturer one.
Right. Okay.
And
the idea behind this is to get polluting cars off the road and get people into newer,
and there's probably going to be a
metal.
Absolutely, I think there's probably going to be more and more of this will come, and you can see why people respond to it because it is a very quick way of dealing with your car. It's £1,000 off a brand new car, great. But it is also because people just aren't thinking about what they're going to be spending on a car potentially over that time. When actually, if they probably bought a car that was a tiny bit newer than their old car, it would probably last another 5, 6, 10 years. Because I do feel that cars are so much better made.
But do you think people now they just want because I've got a Toyota CHR at the moment, which is sort of a mid-range family crossover sort of thing. This thing has got active radar cruise. It's got lane keeping assist system.
Yeah.
You know, it's got reversing camera. I mean, it's full of all the toys and you think people just like, I want, you know, because we're in a smartphone culture now, right?
Absolutely.
And people just want all the toys.
That's right.
Yeah.
But again, yes, I think that is what people like. They want the latest gadget, and cars are getting fuller and fuller of gadgets. But my experience of actually driving quite old cars with nothing on them, I've got 3 cars without ABS.
So tell us what cars you have now.
My personal cars, I have a Land Rover, a Series 3, one of the last ones, a 1984 example. I have a Mini Cooper, but an original one, so it's a proper Mini. So it's a teeny tiny one, a 1964 Mini Cooper.
64,
64, that's right. I was lucky enough to buy, when you could buy them, for £200. That was in 1979.
Wow. And this one you were telling me earlier, it's got roll cage and everything.
Yeah. I put exciting things in it because it's a hoot and it's my car and I can do what I want. and it's a laugh. Yeah. And then for my own idea of comfort is the first generation 3 Series. Yeah. I've got a 320, so it's again, it's a very tiny car.
That's an E21.
E21, with a 6-cylinder engine. It's a very small block. 6 inches. So it's a very sophisticated and quite nice. But there's no safety features as such on it. But I find with older cars, you drive them far more defensively. It's a bit like you're on a bicycle or a motorbike. So you're very aware. Yeah. But older cars, you can see out because again you haven't got all the thick pillars. That's right. So I find you drive them in a different way, and I actually think people pay a bit more attention to you because you stand out so much. There is nothing like you on the road because of either the colour or just the shape of it. Yeah. People just seem to notice that you're there. But I can use these vehicles, especially the
Do you think that with some of those cars, particularly well, actually all 3 of your cars are iconic, the Mini, the Land Rover and the BMW, but do you think that you get an extra level of respect and appreciation on the roads than you would say in any old just modern econobox?
More conversations. I speak to so many people just going to the shops. So I will park it in a car park, and sometimes there is 2 or 3 people there, and
then they'll stop and they'll talk.
That's
a very sociable cars. You make friends.
Yeah, it's the nicest thing in the world. Mostly it's older chaps who said I had one of those. Sometimes it's older ladies who said I had one of those, and that's really nice. But everybody is really, and this is what I find about the car community. Is actually people get on very well. So it doesn't matter what other business is going on. If someone is genuine about cars, you can talk to them, and
it's actually universal language of cars.
Absolutely. You have a lovely, you have a very nice time.
There's one of the wonderful things about Dubai, for example, where we're based, is that there is that universal language of cars. Dubai is a fantastic melting pot of people from all different parts of the world. But when you go to a car meet or you go to a car club thing or you go to a track day, there's just car guys and they're all talking the same language, and it's just wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely.
It will solve the world's problem.
Absolutely. And if people drove older cars, that would be better.
Safer as well. I think so as well. So I want the final question on Bangernomics. Yeah. Do you think this is still relevant today? Can this still be done? I mean, I know you're doing it, but you've had those cars a while.
Yeah, that's
right. Can this still be done?
I think it can do. I just think as I say, I think it has to be reinvented a tiny bit and being made a bit like, look, you're owning a classic car, so you're looking after it, and it can be sold from the environmental perspective as well. To me, that
But are there enough cars still around?
There seems to be. There's always people are always finding cars in barns and most places. But yes, cars are dying out, and there's lots of government legislation coming, I think, which will say you can't drive into a town if you've got a car over 20 years old. I think that's coming, which is a shame.
Would there be special dispensation for what would be deemed classic cars?
There may be, but certainly in Germany it's happening. I know in Oxford they're going to ban everything. They say they will ban everything but electric cars by 2020. That's not far to go. I don't think it's going to happen. Good luck with that one.
That's a whole different conversation.
That's right. It sounds extremely good. But again, if somebody had an older car, which is well looked after in pollution terms and environmental terms, I think it's
over the longer term.
Over the longest time.
Just finding them define the difference between Bangernomics and classic cars.
It's very it's very much on the cusp, really. But Bangernomics really should be a car you don't really care about.
So you can use it
so
every day.
So you'll
park
use it every day. You'll park it
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah.
And if it breaks down or blows up, you just go, it was just a car.
Yeah. All right, so we had a little bit of a break there, and we were talking about some of this other stuff. I mean, seriously, James, you've been really prolific. I mean, you write books. Your books are available on Amazon as ebooks and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's right.
Tell us about some of this other stuff that you've done.
Well, the reason for doing books is that a few years ago, I had to sort of think to myself, what is it that I do? Because I was feeling a tiny bit lost, and I wrote loads of features, but I didn't.
That's a thingy, isn't it, Mike Brewer?
Yeah, that's right. I used to do telly. I used to be involved with telly, so I used to write.
Telly is TV.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's right. I used to write
British colloquialism.
So I used to write TV scripts and things for that, and that program was a very popular program at the time because all it was pointing a camera at people going and buying cars, and I think that's all people do today.
But this is what you kind of do, isn't it? Deals on wheels. I mean, this is effectively your realm, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So
and what are these books here? Well, I love the titles on these books. This is brilliant. The German car industry and my part in its victory.
Well, that's right.
And then you've got the counterpoint to that: the British car industry and our part in its downfall.
Well, that's right. But again, I find academic books really boring, and I just thought I was very interested in the history of the British car industry because it was the biggest.
Yeah.
You know, after the Second World War, it was the biggest, and then what on earth happened?
Yeah.
So that fascinated me. But you can do that.
What on earth happened?
Yeah, what on earth happened?
Well, what on earth happened?
Well, it was our fault, wasn't it? There's my dad.
You'll have to buy the book. Is this your dad?
And that's my dad.
Is this you?
And that's me.
Oh,
so
wow!
There you go.
See that?
So
That's awesome.
That's it. When you publish your own books, you can put yourself on the cover.
Oh, yeah.
So there you go.
That's right. Yeah.
But that was a very good because that wasn't even a British car. That's actually a Vauxhall. Which was owned by General Motors at the time, so that was actually an American car. And actually, it looked like an American car. It was called a Vauxhall Wyvern, and it's a car I remember. And there's actually film of me driving it. My dad was underneath.
What, at that age?
Yeah, operating.
Whoa.
My dad was operating the pedal. Actually, I was younger than that. No, I've got film which I must send you a link to. It's on YouTube of me driving. You can see me driving outside my house. My dad,
we'll try and insert that here if we can later on. That'd be great.
My dad is working the pedals,
Oh,
but it looks very good. It was done. It was something called Cinefilm years ago, which people had the old version of video. So you see me walking to the car, then you see me like that, and obviously I don't know what's going on. I'm looking like that, and my dad is doing all the important stuff. But I based it on all the cars that my dad bought. My dad always used to take me to the showrooms, to buy the cars, and it was fascinating the cars he had. And I thought if I link that in the story, it makes it interesting. And all the people who read it have said, so it makes it an interesting story.
These are incredible books.
And again,
I'm looking forward to reading them. Where can people get these books now?
There you can get them. They're available at all online bookshops, and you can just download them onto an e-reader. So if you don't want the bother of a book, it's even cheaper to just.
So it's there on Amazon, and as is of course Bangernomics, which is an essential purchase. And I want to talk about this. This is what you're doing now.
One thing
It's called Free Car Mag.
Yeah, that's right. It's a car mag that's free.
Yeah.
So there you go. It's
That's
self-explanatory.
exactly what it says on the tin. Yeah.
Exactly. What it isn't, it's not.
You've got famous people on these.
We have got famous people.
Wow.
That's the idea.
Will.i.am and. The guy that eats weird stuff.
Yeah, he eats terrible stuff. I think he just does it deliberately.
Yeah, I think so.
But he drives Land Rovers. The idea behind it, it's not aimed at petrol heads. It's aimed at everybody. That's the reason for having a popular person on the front. It's aimed at people who wouldn't go out and buy one. They don't have to buy it. The content is very light and fluffy. It's got nice pictures in it, and it's just meant to be a very light read. In your lunch hour, you just flick through it. We have celebrities in it, and it's meant to be just a very light thing. So it's so different.
Are you doing this yourself then? This is
I'm
your
doing
own
that myself.
publication?
Yeah, I own everything from stem to stern.
Right.
It's a promoted magazine. We have people who put adverts in it, which is great. But you can subscribe for free, and you get bothered once a month where we say that the latest one is out. You can get bothered at any time. So this
focuses on new cars, though.
Absolutely. So it isn't my core market. It's not it's not what I usually do. But it was just a way of trying to do something a tiny bit different.
Yeah.
And I do want to reach people. The majority of people don't like cars, or say they don't like cars. Most people like cars. They like buying cars, like owning cars, but they're not sort of car magazine readers. So that was the idea behind that.
And what do you think is the future of car magazines?
I think it's still very, very good. I think there are markets for different kinds. There really is. I think people you can divide up. There are petrol heads who want to read, very good drive stories. They want to know what a McLaren is like, and that is not going to go away. What I'm trying to do there with Free Car Mag is to try and get a bigger audience. I'm trying to grow a bigger audience by saying, look, it's done in a slightly unsubtle way. Look, there's a famous person next to a car, but that's one way I want it to work.
You're catching in on the whole celebrity association and stuff like that.
Yeah,
this is very much what car culture is about nowadays, isn't it? It's about cars and movies, cars and celebrities, cars and nice place, cars in Dubai, cars outside Dubai Mall and stuff like that.
That's right. But what we have now, there's lots of ways that people can look at cars, and it's great because people can look at films of cars, videos of cars. Websites full of cars, so the whole thing has fractured, but
it's fractured and changed, isn't it? I mean, even we've found that the whole industry, the media industry, is changing rapidly, and the way that people consume content is very different. For people that want to sort of get into what we do and what we've been doing for a considerable amount of time, let us say, what would be your sort of advice to them?
Well, it's just is that to get the content.
Yeah.
Well, really, you've just. I think there is so much that you can see, which is good now. The content that you produce, you can just find it sort of everywhere now.
Yeah.
And actually, I think that's a good thing. It means that the consumer has more choice. They've got more information at their fingertips than they've ever had before.
The key thing is to get it into this, right? Because that's where they're all at.
That's right.
And I think that for anybody starting out, that's sort of what they want to be looking at. Is being able to create content, but in a multimedia environment, in a variety of different formats. So, for example, this thing. I mean, these are print copies, but these are available electronically.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's right. We originally did hand them out at train stations, and it worked very, very, very well. Yeah. But actually, it's far more flexible to have it as a digital item. It's all very well to print it, but quite honestly, it doesn't justify it to be printed because it isn't important enough. I think a nicely produced magazine like Car or Also Car, there's every reason for doing it because you want to savour that. That you don't have to savour because that you can read in a lunchtime. That's what you're going to flick through it and look at things.
It's very light. Yeah. I want to move on to this thing's really exciting. I want to move on to this, but before we do that, I just want to say I think that I've known James for a long time. I've known him longer than I actually know him because I was reading your stuff before I actually had the honour of meeting you and getting to know you, and I was always inspired by what you were doing and the sort of stuff you were doing, and I think it's fantastic. And even now, listening to you and listening to what you're working on and the car mags and the cars that you own, and I was saying to you, I think that you should get into video and get into YouTube. I think that we would love to see, the Mini Cooper, and the Land Rover and the BMW E21, and how you get on with them. Is that something that you might consider getting into?
It has. It's been something that I've been thinking about doing because it does seem as though, not as though everybody does it, but I think in a way that's the way people are consuming it because actually that's the way I look at things as well. I will have things playing in the background so I'm doing something else. So I don't have to have my full attention in it, but it can gain my attention. So I'm thinking of maybe doing a weekly, instead of writing something which is boring and there's a picture. It is. You're probably right. It has to be the future.
I would urge you to do it. I can't wait to see it. I can't wait. I'll be a subscriber. You got one subscriber, definitely. I can't wait to see it. And another thing I can't wait. I've been holding off talking about this because I wanted to leave the best for last. But this is awesome. This was a comic book about a guy with cars and cool cars. What was the whole concept? It's called Spencer Haze. What was the whole concept of this?
I just thought it was.
And this was drawn and written by you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I did it in the year 2000. It actually appeared originally, and we're going back to the early days of the internet on Channel 4's website. It was on there. So it appeared. The story appeared.
Was that 4 Car?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's
car,
right. Yeah, 4-car. Yeah. So it was on there for a while, and
it was done in strips originally.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And what's the story? What is this about?
All it was just about a gentleman who was frozen in 1973. 1973 is quite a pivotal year. You know, it's quite an interesting year, and it was someone coming back.
Why 1973? Why?
I just like it as a year. It was a year when certain cars came out. I mean, you could still buy an E-Type at those times. Things were quite colourful, and the world was a very different place in that you know, you could punch someone and it wouldn't be.
There was no notion of political correctness.
There was no political correctness, political, in some ways, it's made life a tiny bit easier, but in other ways, it was a very different world. If you wanted to sort something out, you need someone from 1973. And in the old days, there were TV programs that we used to have called The Sweeney.
The Sweeney, the Professionals,
the Professionals,
Minder and all that.
And in a way, it's a homage to that. But the idea was, and this was a long time before a certain TV program came out, in that it was taking someone from 1970.
You can say it. It's YouTube.
I can't. They got very upset with me, but they never did anything about it, so I don't know. So it's taking someone from a year. Yeah. They actually took someone from now and then put them in 1973.
That's right.
I came up with 1973 before they.
It's Life on Mars.
Okay. And I thought it was more interesting.
So that was the reverse of what you did. Yours was first, though.
That came before it. But I thought it was more interesting to take someone from 1973 because I think if you put someone back now, I think it'd be very confusing because you just wouldn't get it. But I think someone from 1973, it would be like a breath of fresh air. So his idea, so the idea was he was a really cool bloke, and obviously it was modelled on you. Absolutely. There you go. I mean, that looks.
That's amazing because that was before you even knew me. That's awesome. Because I did have a moustache back then.
You did, absolutely. So it looks exactly like you.
Awesome.
So he was a cool guy.
I'm so proud of that.
So he was, like a private eye type, but he had cool cars. He had Jensen
Interceptors. You got Jensen, you got E-Type on there, Mini there.
So he was based around cars. So the stories were based around cars. So there would be a car theme to them. And obviously I would like it to be a major motion picture.
But before you get into that, because I think that's a brilliant idea, actually, absolutely. Absolutely must be, but the cars, because I've actually done, some of you might know, I've actually done a bit of comic book stuff myself back in the day. I also fancied myself as a bit of a comic book writer, and I created 1 or 2 comics as well. And I worked with, I can't draw, so whereas you drew these, I couldn't draw. So I worked with some artists. And one thing that frustrated me endlessly was that artists could draw amazing things. They could draw landscapes, they could draw people, they could draw expression. They couldn't draw cars.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm a very average artist. I think I'm okay, but I could be a lot better. But we've discussed before, the Japanese manga comics.
They're the only people that can do cars perfectly.
Unbelievable. And to me, it always seemed odd that nobody over here had never done it. That was just my attempt at doing it. And I've sent the idea off to a lot of film companies over the years.
I hope somebody picks this up, because this has got to be done. This is brilliant. But you know what? Now might be the right time, because there's a lot of movies coming out. There was obviously got the Fast and Furious series, and the Drive, and there was the Baby Driver. And a while back there was another movie where they steal a bunch of old cars as well, which is, I think it was Clint Eastwood's son in it. Somebody will tell me what the name was, whatever. But which I actually thought was a good movie. It was a low budget movie. It was a bit corny, but it was more about the cars. So it was kind of, I quite enjoyed it.
I think there should be more. People should make more films with cars in them, because I think they'd be quite surprised. Because the Fast and Furious, which is preposterous, but I love it, and I go and see it because it is nuts. It's completely nuts. But we, as car people, we just love it.
We lap it up because it's cars.
I mean, I even like the one where it was set in Tokyo. I will watch that. And I don't think there is enough of this. And I really do think that, especially with Netflix doing so much now. I'd like to.
So come on, Netflix, come on, Prime, pick this up. Are you still creating these, or are you done with them for now?
I did a sort of a follow-on from it a few years ago. So I have lots and lots of frames. And I actually have a story of him.
And where can people find this stuff online?
Yeah, you can find. The first story is available on Amazon. So
Okay.
if you just go to Spencer Haze, you'll find it as an ebook. And I think it's as cheap as it can be. I think it's like 99p or something, very cheap indeed.
So before we wrap up, just plug all your stuff, websites, URLs, whatever, where people can find you, where they can find Free Car Mag, etc.
Right, well, Free Car Mag, you can sign up for free, so there's no obligation. We don't pester you with anything, and sometimes we give away cool things like watches and stuff. So there is free, and we did give away a van at one point.
Oh wow,
that was good. Yeah, we gave away Eddie the Eagle's van.
Oh wow,
who is a cultural hero, an icon in this country, and we got the
heroic failure. I think.
Very much a heroic failure. We got the van from the film. We gave that away.
This is the one with what's his name?
Yeah, that's it.
The Wolverine guy.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that bloke.
That bloke. yeah,
that's right. So freecarmag.com, you can find it very easily, and there might be content.
Hugh Jackman.
That's the one.
Jackman,
that's the one. I couldn't think of it. And Bangernomics.com still exists, and you can buy the books through there, or you can find it on Amazon. But just Google my name and you'll come up with all sorts of nonsense that belongs to me. I won't be silenced easily, but I just feel an obligation that life is very short. You've got to do as much as possible. So that's
I think you've done an incredible amount. This stuff is amazing. It's well worth checking out. This man is an absolute legend. I've followed him for years, and I've had the privilege of working with him as well, and I've had the absolute honour of talking to you today. Thank you so much for doing this. This is absolutely brilliant, absolute fun. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Stay tuned. We'll bring you some more of these very, very soon. Thanks so much for watching.